You have a lot to give us. We stand in this pasture before you, asking just a simple and humble prayer, that you grant each one of us the wisdom, strength, courage, patience, humility, and civility to do our jobs in a manner that respects you and those that we represent. Amen.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from Preston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will all those in the gallery please join me in the salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading of the journal.
West Virginia Legislature Senate Journal, March 4th, 2021. The Senate met at 11:01 a.m. Senator Blair, Mr. President, in the chair.
The senator from Ohio requests unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and the journal be approved. Is there objection? The chair hears none. Further reading of the journal is dispensed with and the journal is approved. Introduction of guest. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure and yours to introduce our doc of the day. In the rear of the chamber, we have with us Dr. Luke Finley. He's a long-term West Virginia native. He's finishing his third year of family practice at Marshall University. If he wouldn't mind standing, let the Senate give you a warm welcome.
Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 2002 relating to broadband.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2013 relating to the Hope Scholarship Program.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Education and then the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2025 provide liquor, wine, and beer licenses with some new concepts developed during the state of emergency utilizing new technology to provide greater freedom to operate in a safe and responsible manner.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The House adopted House Concurrent Resolution 23 declaring March 4th, 2021 to be Sexual Assault Awareness Day in West Virginia.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Correction, the message will be received and the resolution will be referred to the Committee on Rules. Senate will be at ease for one moment. Senate will come back to order. Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 351 declaring Israel as a prominent trading partner. and reports back to committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
The report will be received and referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 466, expanding and clarifying definition of appraisal management companies, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 475, dedicating certain fees collected by agencies and licensing boards to General Revenue Fund, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. TARR, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 498, amending definition of sexual contact, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 517, relating to sunset provisions of legislative rules, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2001, relating generally to creating the West Virginia Jumpstart Savings Program, and has amended same, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Patricia Puertas Rucker, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 1, Education Accountability Amendment, and has amended same, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it be adopted as amended, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
The report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the resolution will be referred to the Committee on Finance. Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 561 through Senate Bill 586 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
The Senior Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill 561 through Senate Bill 586 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 14 by Senators Boley, Azinger, Baldwin, Beach, Caputo, Clements, Ehlenfeld, Jeffries, Carnes, Lindsay, Martin, Maynard, Nelson, Phillips, Roberts, Romano, Stallings, Swope, Weld, and WOELFEL, creating the West Virginia Women's Suffrage Memorial.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 15 by Senator Hamilton, extending certain leases between U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Nicholas County Airport Authority.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 13 by Senators Romano, Martin, and Weld, recognizing Benjamin Portero, decorated U.S. Army combat veteran and centenarian.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 14 by Senator Beach, recognizing Pierpont Community and Technical College Day.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 15 by Senator Beach, acknowledging West Virginia Botanic Garden.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Motions. Petitions.
There are none.
Unfinished business.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 12, applying to Congress to call convention to propose amendments allowing state legislatures to pass legislation overriding certain restrictive federal laws.
The resolution will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 13, urging Adjutant General to establish honor guard in each unit to perform military funeral honors.
Senator from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be put upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Clerk or Chair hears none. Clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 13, urging the Adjutant General to establish an honor guard in each National Guard unit to provide military funeral honors to honorably discharged veterans in West Virginia.
The question is on adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? Senator from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is really something I had not foreseen, and it's an honor for me to stand before the body today and to advocate for this resolution. I got a piece of paper that was handwritten on old sheet of notebook paper like we would have had back in elementary school, and it was this resolution. And its author, Woody Williams. And everybody in here knows Mr. Williams is the last living Congressional Medal of Honor from the Second World War, fought at Iwo Jima, hangs out with presidents, flips the coin before the game at the Super Bowl, and is just a legendary American hero. So I'm going to read a little bit of this because Mr. Williams authored it, and I think he deserves that. Whereas per capita more citizens from West Virginia have served in our nation's armed forces than in any other state, and we are proud of our citizens who, despite danger, have done what they must for peace and freedom. Whereas providing military funeral honors is one of the last ways to honor those who have served. Whereas military funeral honors are normally provided by the veterans organizations of the state. However, because of the limited number of members and age of the veterans available, there are many communities unable to provide these services. Whereas it is always important that we honor the brave West Virginians who have faced the enemy, been wounded, and have given their lives not only for our freedom, but for freedom around the world. Be it resolved that the legislature urges the Adjutant General to establish an honor guard in each National Guard unit to provide military funeral honors to honorably discharged veterans in West Virginia. Mr. President, I don't really know what I could say to add to that. I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. Those in favor of the resolution will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, there's 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. I declare the resolution adopted. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Senate Resolution 12, memorializing the life of John W. Small, Jr., West Virginia's longest-serving elected official and dedicated public servant.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 12, memorializing the life of John W. Small, Jr. of Berkeley County, West Virginia's longest-serving elected official and dedicated public servant.
Question is on adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. Bill's on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 368, authorizing DEP to develop reclamation of abandoned and dilapidated properties program. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Mercer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 368 is essentially the same bill, Senate Bill 269, that we ran last year, passed in the Senate but failed to go through the House. It creates a program to be administered by the DEP that will assist cities and counties at cleaning up abandoned and dilapidated properties. There is no funding applied to the program at this time, but it will allow funding from either state or federal sources to be applied to this initiative. The only real difference between the bill that we ran last year and this year is that at the time that the landfill closure fees reach 100%, the remaining funding in the future will go partly to the DEP to continue this program, and part of it will go directly to counties so that they can manage their own local programs themselves. I'm happy to answer questions, but urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine to ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk has the title amendment.
Committee on Rules move to amend the title of the bill.
The question is on adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 381, creating non-resident 3-day fishing license. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from UPSHUR.
Thank you, Mr. President. Creating a non-resident 3-day fishing license, Senate Bill 381. A fishing license for a non-resident is presently called a Class LL license. Currently, the purchase of a Class LL license by someone permits the non-resident license holder to fish for 1 day in this state. Said license costs him or her $3. This bill changes the period of time for which a Class LL license is valid, increasing the same from the 1 day to 3 consecutive days. Further, the bill provides for a proportional increase in cost from $3 to $9 to the licensee. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Question is on
happy to ask you questions.
The question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 434, requiring training for law enforcement officers responsible for investigating crimes of sexual assault. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Brooke.
President, the committee substitute for Senate Bill 434 requires that LEPS create standards and procedures for the initial and ongoing training for law enforcement officers here in the state responsible for investigating sexual assault crimes involving adult victims. The bill, the committee substitute provides that this training will require discussion and instruction on neurobiology of trauma, trauma-informed interviewing, and investigative techniques. Mr. President, we talked to you yesterday regarding one of the resolutions, the difficulties faced by many of the victims of these crimes, and so training like this will, I believe, help a lot of them come forward and have confidence in working with law enforcement as the crimes that have been perpetrated against them move through the process. I also want to thank the Senator from Cabell for his leadership on this bill and the good work that he's done. I'll answer any questions. I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 463, consolidating position of Inspector General of Former Workers' Compensation Fraud and Abuse Unit and position of Director of Insurance Fraud Unit. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Wood.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is an agency bill from the offices of the Insurance Commissioner. It consolidates the position of Inspector General with the position of Director of the Insurance Fraud Unit by replacing 2 references to the Director with those of the Inspector General. Both positions are supervisory in nature. The current Director plans to retire this month, and the Insurance Commissioner does not plan to replace him. This bill does not modify any of the Insurance Commissioner's duties to investigate insurance and workers' compensation fraud. It merely consolidates duplicative positions. Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
The question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted into the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 501, continuing and indexing of license and stamp fees. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from UPSHUR.
Thank you, Mr. President. The proposed legislation will continue the current authority of the Director to increase license and stamp fees in Articles 2 and 2B of Chapter 20 by legislative rule. And legislative rule means it will come back and we will have the authority, to vote whether we enact the fee or not, provided all increases are indexed to the Consumer Price Index. Current authority will expire January 1, 2021, and of course this ends that expiration. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absent not voting. More than a majority of those present and having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 537, relating generally to kidnapping. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 537 is on our kidnapping statute, and it's meant to address the concerns of the Supreme Court of our state in a recent decision last year regarding the kidnapping of a woman here in the southern part of the state. And what the bill does is that it creates a fourth circumstance of which somebody could be prosecuted under this statute by separating out one of the already existing circumstances and inserting thereof and creating the new circumstance of standalone, separate and distinct, of terrorizing the victim or another person. Happy to answer any questions. I urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 294, relating generally to savings and investment programs offered by state. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 305, providing exemption from consumer sales and service tax for certain aircraft maintenance. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Swope moved to amend the bill by striking out everything after the enacting clause.
Senator from Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill allows tax exemption for services to certain aircraft weighing 6,000 pounds or greater. Approximately 3/4 of all the aircraft in West Virginia are less than 6,000 pounds. This amendment would take away the 6,000 pound limit and allow the tax exemption for all aircraft in West Virginia. Happy to answer questions. I urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there discussion? Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment. This was discussed a little bit before going into committee, putting it in with the 6,000 pound limitation in it, and the reason we didn't go in for all the aircraft was because we hadn't had a fiscal note on that second piece yet, and we did get an additional fiscal note, and the additional increase by adding the aircraft below 6,000 pounds on that fiscal note adds another $129,606 a year for the first year, and on the second year, $172,808. So it's a relatively minimal amount relative to the business can be brought to West Virginia for eliminating this tax on something that's very mobile. So I support the gentleman's amendment.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment offered by the Senator from Mercer. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 343, authorizing DMV to process online driver's license or identification card change of address. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 375, relating to county boards of education policies for open enrollment. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 376, removing obsolete provisions regarding DOH standards for studded tires and chains. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 390, reorganizing Healthcare Authority under DHHR and clarifying responsibilities for all-payer claims database. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 397, relating to healthcare provider tax. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 404, modifying well work permits issued by DEP Office of Oil and Gas. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 421, authorizing Workforce West Virginia to hire at-will employees. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 429, exempting Division of Emergency Management from Purchasing Division requirements for certain contracts. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 435, requiring county superintendents to authorize certain school principals or administrators at non-public schools to issue work permits for enrolled students. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 439, allowing use or non-use of safety belt or admissible evidence in civil action. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 469, permitting and establishing requirements for appearance by video for purpose of notarial acts. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading. Bills on first reading. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the remarks by our Senator from CABELL regarding Resolution 13 be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Further remarks. Miscellaneous business. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Subject to announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until Monday at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? Senior Senator from UPSHUR, or excuse me, Senator from UPSHUR.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Natural Resource Committee will meet at 1 p.m. Monday.
Further announcements. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to announce a majority caucus that will take place 30 minutes following the conclusion of the floor session today on the third floor conference room on the West Wing.
Further announcements. If not, question before the Senate is the Senate stand adjourned until Monday, 11 a.m. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate adjourned.
The House will please be in order. Those persons not having privilege of the floor will please vacate the chamber at this time. Members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by the lady from the 4th, Doggett Zukoff.
Thank you. Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, today we come before you humbled and grateful to be in your presence. You tell us that wherever two or more are gathered in your name, you are with us, and we're so thankful for that. We give you all the glory, Lord, and thank you for your gift of grace. Please keep us physically safe and guard our hearts and minds from pride and selfishness. We pray that your will be done through our actions here today. Please help us to be servant leaders for our districts and our beloved state of West Virginia. Keep our hearts open to the opinions and viewpoints of those we serve with. Help us to remember your example to love one another as you first loved us. Struggling for solutions amid different personalities can seem impossible at times, Lord. Help us to endure disagreements with godly courage, honesty, and patience. Thank you for keeping our families, loved one, and our state in your care, and please keep us all safe as we go journey home today. We ask all this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. If members and guests will please remain standing, we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by the gentleman of the 14th, TAKUBO.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Thursday, March 4th, 2021.
Gentleman 30th, Douglas Bates.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal in English be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read.
The gentleman of the 30th, Douglas Bates, asks unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? There are no objections. Lady from the 49th for an update on the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the calendar today, on third reading, special calendar, committee substitute for Senate Bill 270, House Bill 2741, and committee substitute for House Bill 2675 have been moved to the House calendar.
Introduction of guests. Lady from the 49th.
Our doctor of the day is Dr. Luke Finley from Huntington, if everyone would make him feel welcome.
Reports of standing committees.
Your Committee on Energy and Manufacturing has had under consideration House Bill 2792 relating to the expansion of direct access to natural gas service for new customers. Reports back to committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Energy and Manufacturing has had under consideration House Bill 2342, establishing and implementing a program to require bonding sufficient to reclaim abandoned wind generation facilities and solar generation facilities. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 2733 relating to the establishment of a Combat Action Badge and Combat Action Ribbon special registration plates. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security has had under consideration House Bill 2303, moving authority for the West Virginia Veterans Service Decoration and West Virginia Service Cross to the Division of Veterans Affairs. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Originating in the Committee on Government Organization are House Bill 2957 relating to the repeal of outdated code sections and House Bill 2958 relating to repealing outdated sections of state code. Each is reported with recommendation that each do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 296 relating generally to repealing certain rules. Reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Fire Departments and Emergency Medical Services has had under consideration Senate Bill 338 creating Fire Service Equipment and Training Fund. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass and that the second reference to the Committee on Finance be dispensed with.
The report will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, the two chairs have conferred on this matter, and I now ask unanimous consent that the second reference of the bill to the Committee on Finance be dispensed with.
The lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that the committee reference to the Committee on Finance for Senate Bill 338 be dispensed with. Are there objections? There are no objections. The second reference to the Committee on Finance will be dispensed with. Next, report of standing committees.
Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration House Bill 2763 creating West Virginia Cyber Incident Reporting. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration House Bill 2632 permitting Commissioner of Highways to make transfers of money within the State Road Fund, reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration House Bill 2668, removing obsolete provisions regarding DOH standards for studded tires and chains, House Bill 2719, relating to the Division of Motor Vehicles use of electronic means and other alternate means to provide notice, House Bill 2721, providing an electronic notice of school attendance and satisfactory progress to the Division of Motor Vehicles in lieu of requiring each student to provide a paper notice, House Bill 2742, providing explicit authority to process an online driver's license for identification renewal or reissuance when the applicant needs to update the address, and House Bill 2786, relating to powers and duties of the Chief Technology Officer, reports the same back with the recommendation that each do pass, that they be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
The report will be received, and each bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Your Joint Committee on Enrolled Bills has examined, found truly enrolled, and on March 4th, 2021, presented to His Excellency the Governor for his action, Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 14, providing for additional options for alternative certification for teachers.
The report will be received.
Your Joint Committee on Enrolled Bills has examined, found truly enrolled, and reported to His Excellency the Governor on March 4th, 2021, House Bill 2262, relating to the Controlled Substance Monitoring Database.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had in consideration House Bill 2776, creating the Air Ambulance Patient Protection Act, reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had in consideration House Bill 2674, relating to the administration of anesthetics, reports back a committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had in consideration House Bill 2598, altering the definition of an above-ground storage tank, reports the same back with the recommendation that do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had in consideration House Bill 2097, relating to calculating net enrollment for homeschool students enrolled in one virtual school course in the public school system, reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance. Are there further reports of standing committees? If not, reports of select committees? Message from the Executive? Message from the Senate?
The Clerk of the Senate announced that the Senate has concurred in the House amendments and passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 12, relating to local health department accountability.
That message will be received.
The Clerk of the Senate announced that the Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 263, permitting online raffles to benefit charitable and public service organizations.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 332, providing procedure for West Virginia to select delegates to Article 5 Convention.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 345, expanding alcohol test and lock program to include offenders with drug-related offense.
The message will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I gave you the update to the calendar today, you heard me say that House Bill 2741 was going to be moved off. That bill was moved off because the bill that we're talking about today, Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 345, is the same. It is a companion bill for that. Therefore, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, dispense with the committee reference, and read a first time.
The lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 345 be taken up for immediate consideration, the committee reference dispensed with, and the bill be read a first time. Are there objections? There are no objections. The clerk will read the bill a first time.
Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 345, expanding alcohol test and lock program to include offenders with drug-related offense.
The bill will be advanced to second reading. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the constitutional rule requiring a bill to be read on 3 separate days be dispensed with, and that the bill be read a second and third time and put upon its passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the constitutional rule be dispensed with and that Senate Bill, Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 345 be read a second and third time and put upon its passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk, the gentleman from 32nd, Doug Fast, and the gentleman from 35th, Doug Capito. The clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members. Are there 100? No, 2 members absent and not voting. 2/3 of members elected, having, or 4/5 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the motion adopted. Clerk will read the bill a second time.
Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 345, expanding alcohol test and lock program to include offenders with drug-related offense.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. The clerk will read the bill a third time.
Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 345, expanding alcohol test and lock program to include offenders with drug-related offense.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman from the 32nd to explain the bill? 35th to explain the bill? Someone explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a little confusion there, technical issues regarding the House bill, now the Senate bill. This Senate Bill 345 relates to expansion of the alcohol test and lock program to offenders with drug-related offenses. Now, first of all, right now the technology does not allow, or the technology does not include that interlock program can detect drugs. Hopefully someday that technology will be available. But a person who is arrested and convicted for driving under the influence of drugs has an automatic license suspension. If that person volunteers to or is put on the DUI interlock program, that suspension can be lifted. There are statistics that persons who are convicted of driving under the influence of drugs often move to alcohol abuse. And so this is kind of blending of a safety mechanism that persons who are convicted of drug use while driving can now experience this safety mechanism for alcohol-related driving. And so that is what this bill does, and I would urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? The gentleman at 29th, Doug Steele, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the Vice Chairman, if he would yield.
Yes.
So the blow and goes for alcohol.
Yes.
And we're putting it on folks that have a drug-related offense.
It is an option. It creates an option for the court to allow to put that person. What it does is, number one, it can still detect alcohol, obviously, and statistics show that persons are convicted of driving under the influence of drugs often resort to alcohol. And so it's trying to help catch those people from driving under the influence.
But the device doesn't detect drugs at all, right?
That is correct. Not now. Hopefully the technology will increase to that.
What specific drug-related crimes would these people be convicted of?
Any kind of drug where a person is convicted under the charge of driving under the influence of drugs.
Oh, so if it was like if they were convicted of driving under the influence of marijuana, they would get an alcohol blow and go.
Yes.
Okay.
Any drug. And there also, when you're convicted driving under the influence of drugs, there's a requirement that you have to undergo drug screens, drug testing. Okay?
So they're getting
that's
drug tests.
automatically part of the program.
So they're getting drug tests and drug screenings anyway, but now they're getting an alcohol blow and go.
Yes.
And that's at the cost of the person that's putting it in their cars paying for that?
Yes, and again, we had expert testimony stating that oftentimes people convicted of the drug offense while driving resort to alcohol. So it's a blending of safety measures to keep people right now under the influence of alcohol from driving.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The gentleman at 30th, Doug Bates, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very quickly, would the gentleman...
Yes.
The majority leader moved 2741, and we're taking up 345. Are they the same bill? Is there any difference between those two bills? Either gentleman. Or the lady.
Okay. The difference is the Senate bill fixed a technicality to weed out people from being convicted of driving under the influence of a prescribed medication.
Okay, so apart from that difference, the bills are identical.
I'm sorry, correct? Pardon?
Apart from that difference, the bills are identical.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
You're correct.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman at the 16th, Doug Linville, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was the lead sponsor of the bill in the House. It was by request of the Division of Motor Vehicles. Just for clarity for the body, part of this implicates some of the federal laws and funding that are allowed. I think the overall intent of the bill is to allow for there to be both the safety of the public and the ability for someone to end up being able to participate in a program that would allow them to continue to have their driver's license and continue to be able to go to work. So yes, certainly if they had an alcohol offense, or rather if they had a DUI drugs, it's probably not going to be, what it was not that they were drinking alcohol, and so the interlock device obviously currently does not detect whatever it was that they had the issue with. But what this does allow is for us to comply with the federal government and allow for these folks to be able to have that ability to participate in a program, urinalysis, all those sorts of things, and continue to have the ability to get to work. So I think that's the overall intent of the bill, and I would urge its passage.
The gentleman at 37th, Doug Pushkin, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to try to clear a couple. I was listening to the exchange between a friend from the 29th, I believe, and the vice chair. And I understand it a little bit differently, because we're already doing something like this through the Jobs and Hope program that was created, I believe, last session or the year before. And it's that people can volunteer to go into that program if they've lost their license, and if the charge they lost their license for is driving under the influence of an illegal drug. It's not, you think of the blow and go when you think of like this type of system, but they could also voluntarily submit to random drug screenings and through the Jobs and Hope office. What this bill simply does is open that up to people who aren't in that program. So if they volunteer for this program and they sign up for the random drug screenings, it helps them get their license back quicker. That's all it does.
Lady in the 51st, Doug FLEISCHAUER, is recognized.
Would the Vice Chair yield?
Yes.
So the way I'm reading this, and please tell me if I'm incorrect, it's everyone who participates in the alcohol program also must participate in the drug screening.
No.
Well, if you look at line 44 on page 3, it says a person participating in the motor vehicle alcohol and drug test and lock program shall submit to drug testing in a manner and at intervals prescribed by the commissioner. Is there a proviso that says that it's only for people that have been arrested for drug offenses?
It's DUI drugs that they would then have to be a participant.
It has to be both?
No.
Can you tell me which section it says that it's both? Because the way I'm reading it, if you go up to paragraph C4, it says, purpose of this section, a motor vehicle, alcohol, and drug test and lock system means and if you go on to the end, the person is determined to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs.
The testimony was that only if you are convicted of DUI drugs will you have drug testing. If you're convicted of DUI alcohol, you are not automatically required to have DUI drug tests.
Well, that's not what...
But just the interlock.
I don't see anywhere in the bill that it says that. I'm not sure how the testimony would take precedence over the bill.
What we have here is, I'm not exactly sure of the line on the Senate bill, but a person participating in a motor vehicle alcohol drug test and lock program shall submit to drug testing in a manner and intervals prescribed by the commissioner.
Well, what I'm concerned about are, you have people who are participating in the alcohol program, and that, as the gentleman from Raleigh County mentioned, is pretty expensive. And then you're also, I think, there's nothing in here, and I think it could be quickly fixed if it's only alcohol. I think there should be a proviso that says that you are not required to submit to drug testing, which is a search. It's a bodily search.
Was that a question? I'm sorry.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I was trying to describe the problem that I think the absence of the language creates is that regardless of the testimony, what this says is that I think it's, let me find that language again. That you have to participate in the drug testing.
To the lady, I would merely respond. I mean, we're on third
It says
reading.
a person participating shall submit to drug testing, so it's mandatory, even if they haven't been.
Someone that has been convicted of DUI drugs.
Well, that's not. I don't think that's what. I don't see anywhere where it says that. And please correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it also states the inner manner as prescribed by the commissioner.
Right, but if it's mandatory, that means you got to do it. If it's a shall language.
In a manner as and in intervals as stated by the commissioner. So
everyone who agrees to a blow and go now also must agree to drug testing.
No. Only those that are convicted of DUI, alcohol, but drugs have to submit to drug testing.
But there's nowhere in this bill that says that you can tell me about.
But I think that's existing law.
Well, we don't have any existing law about people who've been arrested for drug offenses.
As far as drug testing is what you were talking about.
Right, and what I'm talking about, what I'm concerned about, is that people who get arrested for drunk driving now, under the language that I read to you, it's mandatory that they also get drug tested. That's the way I read it. And I think that could be easily fixed, but thank you. Yes. Unless you can tell me somewhere where it doesn't say that, I think it's a problem with the bill.
Understood. We just have a difference on interpretation.
I don't see there's any way the commissioner can say that people need not be drug tested because it says shall. These people in the future all will have to be drug tested, and maybe there are people that think that's appropriate, but that's giving up some rights that a lot of people would not want to give up.
I appreciate the comment.
Thank you.
Yes.
The gentleman from the 56, Douglas Howe, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes.
I'm trying to understand this bill a little bit more. So if someone is convicted of driving under the influence of a drug that could be marijuana, methamphetamine, something along those lines, they could get their license back if they put an ignition interlock on their car that detects alcohol.
That's correct.
So this person could be under the influence of marijuana or methamphetamine again, blow in the machine, and the car would start and they'd be able to drive.
Yes.
As long as they didn't have any alcohol.
Yes, but they still have to participate in random drug tests along with this.
I understand that. What do these units cost?
I don't know.
Are they paid? But they are paid for by the person who has it installed?
Yes.
Is that a state agency that installs these, or is it a private company?
Private company.
So
contracted.
Okay, so we're setting up a program where someone could be under the influence of a drug, not have alcohol in their system, and they're transferring money to a private company to get this interlock that does nothing.
And the point is, the logic behind it is that oftentimes, as we know, alcohol is becoming extremely accessible. Okay? And the point is, people arrested and convicted for DUI drugs often resort to alcohol. This will help in that regard, keep people resorting to alcohol from driving on the roads.
But it won't stop the person from being under the influence of drugs from driving, which is what they were convicted for.
The technology right now will not detect drugs through a blow and go. Not right now. Perhaps in the future, but not right now. But it will detect alcohol that people often resort to.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The gentleman to the 15th, Douglas Foster, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I find myself, once again, a little bit of odd predicament agreeing with the gentleman from the 37th. We don't do that very often, but I've been in this program, had employees that work their way through this program. With the Jobs and Hopes program, they can do this now. And all it is, exactly as the gentleman said, is it's completely optional. They don't have to put the blow and go in their vehicle, but it gives them a shorter time frame. And I know from myself that the Jobs and Hopes program has been very beneficial in getting people that do have a drug offense back into the workforce. And this just expands it into the interlock program. It's a very good bill, and the gentlelady from the 51st had a concern, but looking at that concern, it's as prescribed by the commissioner. The commissioner is not going to prescribe a test that isn't applicable, therefore testing somebody for a drug test whenever their DUI was due to alcohol. So the blow and go would be the only one that would apply to somebody unless the commissioner is not going to prescribe that. So I don't think any language is necessary to make that change. So I would definitely urge passage. It's a very good bill.
The gentleman to the 43rd, Douglas Nestor, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from the 35th please yield? Excuse me, I got my numbers wrong, sir. 32nd. Excuse me, my first time asking someone to yield.
No such luck. Yes, sir.
Delegate, does the bill mandate that someone who is charged with the DUI that wishes to undergo the deferral program and elect to have the alcohol test and lock placed in their car also have to complete, as a matter of eligibility for that program, to complete what the Division of Motor Vehicles has termed the alcohol safety and treatment classes?
Yes.
Okay, and in the capacity of having to complete those classes, do you know whether the alcohol safety and treatment classes mandates that whether you're an alcohol offender, or we'll just leave it at that, as an alcohol offender, has to take a drug test?
Alcohol offenders do not have to take the drug test, just alcohol, per the DMV. Alcohol offenders only.
But the safety and treatment course, is there not an initial intake drug screening that's associated with that?
There is a one-time intake screening, yes.
Okay. So in any event, whether someone's a DUI offender, a combination DUI or alcohol offender, or simply an alcohol offender, they're going to be drug tested at least once, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the... Lady to my 51st, for what purpose does the lady seek recognition?
I would like to ask leave of the House to amend on third. I think I have a way to fix the problem quickly, and I have written it and would like to submit it if I could.
No, the chair has called the vote. Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 94 ayes, 4 nays, and 2 members absent or not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 345, expanding alcohol test and lock program to include offenders with drug-related offense.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Are there further Senate messages?
The Senate has adopted Senate Concurrent Resolution 8, Fire Chief Kenneth Jr. Russell Memorial Bridge.
The message will be received. The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure, then the Committee on Rules.
The Senate has adopted Senate Concurrent Resolution 9, Haney Family Veterans Memorial Bridge.
The message will be received. The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure, then the Committee on Rules. Are there further Senate messages? If not, resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 24, urging Congress to extend federal tax incentives to participants in Jumpstart savings programs.
Late in the 49th.
Resolutions? Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with, and that each resolution be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committee as indicated on the delegate console system.
The lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with, and that each resolution be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the delegate console system. Are there objections? There are no objections. Petitions, motions, bills introduced.
House Bill 2919, protect privacy of those who store firearms in West Virginia.
Lady in the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, and that each bill be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the delegate console system.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, and that each bill be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the delegate console system. Are there objections? There are no objections. Unfinished business. Bills on third reading.
Senate Bill 358, removing prohibition on ATMs located in area where racetrack video lottery machines are located.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having read? There are no objections. To the members, this bill was advanced to third reading with the right to amend. Are there amendments pending?
Delegate Capito moves to amend the bill. This is Capito AM 3-4.
Question now before the House is the amendment. The gentleman to 35th.
I appreciate everybody. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate everybody on our unanimous consent yesterday, and I'd ask unanimous consent to withdraw the amendment.
Are there objections to the amendment being withdrawn? The chair hears no objection. That amendment is withdrawn. Are there further amendments? Then the bill will be read a third time.
Senate Bill 358, removing prohibition on ATMs located in an area where racetrack video lottery machines are located.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman to 35th, Delegate Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Very simple bill here. This amends Section 29-22A-9F9, which prohibits the use of an ATM in an area of the racetrack video lottery games, and it deletes that current section of code to allow for ATMs to be in those areas. Mr. Speaker, that is the bill, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 73 ayes, 25 nays, and 2 members absent or not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 358, removing prohibition on ATMs located in an area where racetrack video lottery machines are located.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2257, relating to extended supervision for certain drug offenders.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman to 35th, Delegate Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We discussed this bill a little bit yesterday and amended it twice yesterday, and the bill, as amended, 2257, provides extended supervised release for certain drug offenders, certain very serious drug offenders. The purpose of this bill was to make sure that we're always trying to make our communities safer. I do agree that we want to reserve long-term jail sentences for those that are dangerous and not those that we're scared of. And so I think we carefully crafted a piece of legislation that allows us to ensure the safety of our communities while monitoring the activities of those that have done great damage to them. And we've reserved in this bill these penalties and this supervision to relate to those individuals that are pushing very serious and very dangerous drugs into our community. And we heard some of those drugs yesterday. They include fentanyl, methamphetamines, and the like. We believed in committee, those of us that, the majority of us in committee believed that this was a bill to keep our communities safer, that ensured that we are allowing folks to get back into the community, but with some stipulations involved. Mr. Speaker, again, the crux of this bill is to provide that up to 10 years of supervision could be applied to offenders of certain drug crimes in West Virginia. Most notably, those drug crimes would involve possession with intent to distribute the most serious drugs. And those drugs were defined and laid out yesterday, and those are in Schedule 1 and 2, and they must be a narcotic. And so the operative language is that it's, and we took out yesterday, I'll note that we took out the conspiracy portions of this bill, and we also, with the gentleman from the 50th Amendment, brought it in concert with other supervised release manners that we handle on with sex offenders that get a hearing within 60 days of being released, which I believe improves the bill. So, Mr. Speaker, that's the bill. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman from the 36th, Delegate Pritt, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill, and this is the reason. What I think we oftentimes see is we have what you could call a cycle of government. What oftentimes happens is that a problem is perceived. Okay, oftentimes a problem is perceived, and after the problem is perceived, we ask the government to step in and do something. After the government steps up to do something, at that point, there's an intervention of the government, and at that point in time, whatever they're doing apparently isn't working. And the problem I have with this bill is that more times than not, the solution apparently is to add on more government, a new layer of government. This is a program that is, in terms of, that is really just adding on to what we're already doing in the correctional system. We heard extensive testimony in the judiciary about all the different programs that they are doing to help prevent recidivism. Program after program, over and over, that we're trying to do to supposedly reform these people who have these various issues. What happens at that point is they're let go after an extensive amount of time, and I think the problem with this is that more times than not, the program is either working or it's not working, and I think that's really what this comes down to. The programs that are being done in the DOC right now are either working or they're not working. If they're working, what we're wanting to do here to add on up to 10 years of supervised release is not needed. If they're not working, the answer is not to add on more government. The answer is not to hire on all of these new individuals who are going to be supervising the release. That's not the answer. And I'll give you some very, very concrete examples of what could potentially happen here. Let's say that somebody is, we have somebody who's supervised for a period of 10 years. That could be added on for a lot of different offenses here, up to 10 years. This has never been done in our state when it comes to drug offenses. 10 years is added on. This person, let's say, goes and they want to get a job in North Carolina or Florida. Well, they're not going to be able to do that without a court hearing. And more times than not, an employer is going to take a look at the situation. The employer is going to ask themselves, do I want to hire this person on? They're going to have a conversation about this with the person. They could go to this person who's on supervised release, and they could say to them, I need you down here right now or you're not getting the job. That's really the problem here. And if this person is not able to go, that means they're going to be stuck in our communities. It's going to be a big problem that we're going to be having to potentially deal with. A very common saying that I've heard over the years is about idle hands, that idle hands are the devil's playground. In my opinion, this bill encourages idle hands. We don't need a new layer of government. We need to reform our government. And for this reason, I am speaking in opposition to this bill, and I hope you'll join me. Thank you.
The gentleman of the 29th, Douglas Steele, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the time to talk about this bill. This is a bill I've actually introduced for several years, and thank the chairman of Judiciary for running the bill and working it out, and I think a lot of good amendments got into the bill along the way. I would like to give you a different perspective on how this additional layer of government works. This is really modeled after your extended supervision for sex offenders. As a prosecutor, I've prosecuted sex offenders. I have prosecuted sex offenders that violate their extended supervision. The whole point in extended supervision is to watch someone who has a propensity to have a repeat crime of the same nature. If you read the bill and you heard how the chairman and the vice chairman explained this is pointed at methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, heavyweight drugs. And what we see a lot of in our community is the same people over and over spreading these poisons in your community. If you look at your sex offender registry, that thing works very well to watch people who are potential recidivists and have a high potential for recidivism. One person in particular that I was able to convict for violating their extended supervision was a very violent sex offender that targeted females between the ages of 5 and 10. and he continually would slip out of his electronic monitoring, and he created this ruse over the course of a year in which he had fooled the court and fooled the probation officer into thinking he had a malfunctioning device.
Chair, here's a point of order. Jim will state the point.
It's great storytelling, but it has nothing to do with this bill, and I'd hope that the Speaker would stick to the bill.
We're talking about extended supervision.
Yeah, you're talking about sex offenders. This is for drug offenders.
It's comparable.
It's not. Come on now.
Well, Chair will remind all members, we are here to debate the text of the bill. Chair does not have the bill in front of him, but Chair will remind all members that we are here to debate the bill. The gentleman does still have the floor.
Well, if he doesn't want to hear a story, that's fine.
Yep, the gentleman does still have the floor.
Looking at extended supervision, what it's there to do is to protect the community from people that are repeatedly doing the same thing. It's not to put additional restraints on people to keep them from getting a job or anything like that. It's to protect your community. You know, my community in southern West Virginia, outside of Berkeley, it's been ravaged by these drugs. We have people coming from Columbus, Baltimore, Detroit, repeatedly, over and over again, going into these small communities in my county and continually pushing heroin that came from Detroit, came from somewhere else. And as our police officers try to deal with this issue, you know, in Raleigh County on any given night of the week, I've got 4 to 6 police officers with the sheriff's department that are watching a county that is over an hour and a half across. The gentleman from the 32nd has the same issue, or the folks from the 32nd in Fayette County. They have a similar issue where they're watching high-end drug dealers coming in from out of state that are repeatedly pumping this dope into our community. By having this tool, this is an intelligence tool. This is a tool that shows law enforcement, hey, this license plate belongs to somebody that's been in here, been convicted twice of selling narcotics. And here they are back in the community again. And if I go and look back and I see, you know, they've been in this location before, we may need to watch this. You know, it gives intelligence to police officers that are dying for intelligence. Myself and some other delegates were talking just today and yesterday of how hard it is to get police officers right now. We can't even fill out a state police academy training with enough police officers to fill all of those seats. These officers are working overtime, they're being spread thinner, and they're being put in a position where they are highly outnumbered by the drug dealers that are pouring into our state and spreading this poison. This is a tool to give them intelligence to stay ahead of not someone who is a victim of their own circumstance, not someone who's just a poor user that doesn't know any better to help themselves. We're talking about people that are poisoning your community, that are out there continually, repeatedly pumping fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine into your community. That's what this is pointed at. This is not some additional layer of bureaucracy. This is a tool to help law enforcement respond rapidly, quickly, and efficiently to repeat drug offenders. And I would encourage everyone's support of that today, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 50th, Garcia, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start off today by thanking the Chairman of Judiciary, gentleman from the 35th, for supporting the amendment that I put into this bill yesterday, and for this body too. I think it makes the bill better. And I think that's an important thing that we're doing, every bill trying to make it better in this body. I talked to another colleague yesterday prior to offering the amendment, asking whether he would support it. And he asked me a very pertinent question. He said, well, if I support the amendment and the amendment passes, will you support the bill? And I very directly said, no. I cannot, in good conscience, do that. I heard another comment in the Judiciary the other day, the committee, that we have to do something. And I'm sympathetic to that statement, to the way that drugs are ravaging our state. We have to do something. But I don't believe that's the case. We have to do the right thing. You know, there's been talk, we're talking about nonviolent drug offenders. I've heard the word dangerous. I think a lot of people are using the label, these are the bad guys. But the bill, it captures those struggling with addiction. And it captures people who are feeding the habit. It may capture other people too, but it captures those people. And the gentleman from the 29th, again, I appreciate your point of view on this, but these are not sex offenders. These are not necessarily perpetual offenders. This is different. So I say, when we've looked at criminal justice in the past and the drug epidemic, we didn't just do something. Back in 2013, we worked on the Justice Reinvestment Initiative. And we had stakeholders, including law enforcement and prosecutors and judges and victims. And in that bill, we made a policy of the state that incarceration for the purpose of incarceration does not work. That technical violations, which is an issue that will come up with this new policy, that revoking people for a dirty urine for the rest of their sentence, that doesn't work. We talked about risk assessments and using data. And maybe the thing that I don't know if how much people understand this, but we did not have substance abuse treatment for offenders who are coming out of incarceration at that time. And this body has made leaps and bounds improvements in our state to do that. So, and we've moved forward with other stakeholder groups. 2015, we did juvenile justice reform. Recently, we have looked at issues related to removing barriers to employment, the restoration of rights, and supporting people to become tax-paying citizens of this great state. Because the road for drug offenders, it's a long and winding road, and I'll leave you with this. You know, I grew up, there's a board game I like, it's called Chutes and Ladders. Many of you might have seen the same thing and played it. With Chutes and Ladders, that's the situation that I think many people who will be affected by this bill, that's their situation. It's a long and it's a winding road, and we need more ladders, and we need less chutes. So I ask you to join me in opposing this bill.
The gentleman, the 62nd, Douglas Hurst.
I rise in opposition to this bill. I'm not going to bore you with any long speech or anything, but simply put, just extending what does not work now for a longer period of time certainly is not going to fix anything with this problem. I have watched our probation and parole system fail massively with people that I know in my district, and to extend it for an additional 10 years, I mean, what's the sense? If these people can't be trusted, that we have to watch them for 10, 15, 20 years, perhaps they should stay incarcerated. I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but extending a failed program certainly is not it. I'll be voting no, and I encourage others to do the same. Thank you.
Lady in the 51st, Douglas Walker is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman yield?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. How many people are we reincarcerating for technical violations of supervision, parole, or probation?
I couldn't speculate.
What is considered a technical violation?
I don't have that list in front of me.
Do we have any research of how extended supervision would affect someone's employment, family, and recovery?
No, but I think it would probably benefit it. I think that's why we're doing this.
But we have the data? Yes,
I don't
ma'am.
have any data in front of
Thank
me.
you, sir. I appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, can I speak to the bill?
Lady is recognized.
Thank you. So I want each and every one of you to understand this is not a story. I'm here to be a truth teller to you today. As many of you in the Judiciary Committee heard a testimony from a former inmate, from my friend, Kenneth Matthews. See, last session, we ended on a Saturday, and I extended my stay in Charleston so I can go visit Mount Olive Prison. Kenny was still in that prison. And when he testified in the judiciary room, because I homeschooled my child and was on a Zoom when we were doing class, I missed being there to support him. But I caught him in the hall as I was walking to my office with his head down. And you know what he told me? Despite all of this success and you giving him props of being unique, a unique West Virginia, he said, Danny, I failed. I failed the men and women that are behind bars. I failed my son. I failed my counselors because the bill still passed out of committee. I need you to bear with me as I read a letter from Kenny, just as I wasn't in that Judiciary Committee, but I want you to hear his truth. Hi, my name is Kenneth Matthews. I am 30 years old and a formerly convicted person. My story is not unique. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Look around where I lived and there are hundreds of me. Series of bad decisions and events led me to the point where my substance abuse disorder and my co-occurring issues took over my life. In 2010, I was arrested and charged with several felonies stemming from distribution of narcotics in West Virginia. When it was all said and done, I pled guilty to 1 count of possession with intent to deliver marijuana and possession with intent to deliver cocaine. The street value of the drugs that I was charged with was a combined total of $820. In 2017, I pled guilty to 2 deliveries of heroin. The combined total of those were $40. I can't make and won't make any excuses for the things that I did. I knew I was breaking the law, but my addiction had such a grip on me that as long as I was keeping myself from being sick and some food in my cupboards, I didn't care. That's the nature of substance abuse disorders. The things that you really want to do, you can't. And the things that you don't really want to do, you feel compelled to do. My disorder started with prescription pills stemming from a knee injury I suffered while in college. Once the pills didn't help or I couldn't get enough of them, I moved to a harder substance. As I spiraled down deeper, I lost jobs, apartments, and relationships. This led me to supporting myself and my substance abuse by selling drugs. At that time, you couldn't tell me that I had a problem, though. It was during my last incarceration that I began questioning my life and who I was. I asked myself, why is it that I was comfortable being in prison? Why did the consequences not deter me from my decisions that I made? I worked on my recovery. I started forming the change that I wanted to see in my life while still in prison. I questioned every decision I made and pushed myself beyond my comfort levels. I would like to take all the credit for my transformation, but many people were instrumental in my change. For the longest time, I saw no value in my life. It wasn't until others saw my value and treated me as a person, not the sum of my mistakes, that the reality began to take hold. Brian Lewin, my career development specialist at Mount Olive Correctional Complex, other inmates, and even some correctional officers were a few of those early influences. Then on April 8th, 2020, I was released from prison. Firstly, you must understand that I made parole in February. It only took 2 long months for me to secure a home plan and be released. The flaws in the system began to take form. Here I was 3 years in recovery, and most rehab facilities wouldn't accept me. The reason ranged for I haven't been in active use for so long, to my charges for delivery show a life of dealing and not necessarily using. To say I was discouraged would be putting it mildly, but thanks to my institutional parole officer at Mount Olive, I finally secured a home plan and was released. Unfortunately, again, I am not unique. Hundreds of men and women getting released from prison experience these issues. That's the nature of the system. Quick to get you in, but slow to release. After my release, I was completely in a foreign environment. Not only had I not ever lived in Charleston area, but for the first time in my adult life, I was truly working my recovery, staying out of trouble, and trying to live a normal life. I was completely lost. I didn't know how to just live. This is where my story becomes a unique one. People and organizations came beside me and helped me to navigate my new life. I had become reborn, and they were my new parents, teachers, and instructors. People like my fiance, Rachel, her mother, Rhonda, my friends, Joanna and Greg, my mother and sisters, all saw my purpose and helped me. Organizations like Jobs and Hope, the Covenant House, Kisra, West Virginia Cares, and countless others all provided me with help and resources to keep pushing me to be the best person I can be. If it weren't for these people and organizations, I wouldn't be unique. I would rather be another statistic. I would be back in the system, not a little over a month from being released from parole. It's the people that help people, not laws. It's caring about someone beyond what they may care for themselves that is the missing piece to the puzzle. This bill shouldn't pass and won't work for a lot of reasons. History has proven that more laws or stiffer penalties aren't a motivating factor in the prevention of criminal offenses. If the intention is to help people reintegrate into society and provide a mechanism to help them work through their addictions, then why provide a possibility to overload an already clogged system? I saw a story about a probation officer that was given an award, the Probation Officer of the Year, for managing a caseload double the recommended size. My first question is, why would she have a caseload double what it's supposed to be? Then secondly, what type and quality of supervision could or did she provide? Now, the discussion is about instituting a law that would add to an already tapped probation officer's caseload. I know that there are provisions being put into the effect of the bill were to be passed that would add probation officers. My question is, if probation officers are facing largely seemingly unmanageable caseloads already, why aren't more being hired now? Wouldn't that possibly help with the recidivism rate? Wouldn't that help provide a mechanism to help facility probationers getting access to life-saving and changing resources? As a person that has been through the criminal system, I know firsthand that sentencing criminal offenses are generally regarded in the worst light. Most judges sentence someone to incarceration because they feel that the offenses committed wasn't deserving or eligible for alternate sentences. With this bill, a person was sentenced to incarceration is now being told that you should be on probation beyond parole. If they should be on probation, why not sentence them to probation in the first place? There's 2 more pages to this letter, but I want to get to the end. An individual gets released from incarceration. They get a little job and barely surviving. They pay their parole fees every month. They work their recovery and avoid law enforcement contact. They are told by a company that as soon as they are released from parole, they will be hired on and have a career with room for advancement and relocation. Their family is struggling to make it. They make too much for a lot for an assistance services, but too little to really get ahead. They're excited to have a job opportunity and know that they will be able to provide a better life for their family. After all, they helped take care of him during his incarceration. They spent money on gas for visits, money for phone calls, money for letters, and even paid the parole fees for the first couple of months until he found a job. He promised he'd do better, get off of parole and be a provider for his family. He's not in the news speaking at the Capitol. He works long days for low pay. He could do what he had done always, take a chance. He could sell a little just to add a little money to his family. He knows enough people, but he's done too much time as it is. He's missing out on family events because he can't travel without permission. He's on the verge of giving up, but release from parole is just a couple of months away, and then a great job and career. He gets a notice in the mail for a court date. He has to go in front of a judge with his public defender to see if he has to do extended supervision. At the hearing, it's brought to the judge's attention that he had a relapse early in his parole. He did a shocker at regional for 30 days and hasn't had a positive urine since. His public defender tells the judge that his client is working and has a potential for better employment. Since his relapse, he has maintained his recovery and is hoping to move forward in his life. The judge asks him, "Do you go to recovery meetings?" He says no. He works too long to make it to the meetings. The judge asks him, "Do you have a vehicle?" He says no. He's barely making his parole fees each month. The judge, after a few more questions and answers, determines that he should receive another year of extended supervision. He's given a curfew, a higher supervision fee than the $40 he is currently paying, and told he must attend 3 recovery meetings each week. He returns home feeling defeated. He knows he's been trying and felt like it wasn't enough. He tells his current employer of his new curfew and that his schedule needs to be changed. The change in his schedule means less money. The curfew means less activities with his family. The extended supervision means the job he was going to get goes to someone else, someone not on supervision. His family struggle increases. They all feel like they didn't do enough. So ask yourself, did he fail? Did his family fail? How did extended supervision help? How did it help his family? How did it help his community? And how is it going to help our state? So I stand before you, my colleagues, and I'm going to oppose this bill because making it better doesn't make it right. Kenneth Matthews, in black and white, Kenneth Matthews stood before you. Kenneth Matthews, as a mountaineer, should never feel like he is not enough to even walk the halls that we serve in. Do not put another burden on other Kenneth Matthews in our state. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 63rd, Douglas Hardy, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to talk about this bill. I had no inclination that I would do this today, that I would get up and talk about this bill. I've been conflicted with this for the past couple of days in reading this bill. Had some conversation with my roommate, Chuck Horst, about it last night. And you guys know I never get up and speak on this floor unless something lays on my heart. So the way that I see this piece of legislation, is it extending something that's a failure? Maybe it could be. It could be something that we're extending that is a failing program. But I want to tell you a little story about the problems with addiction in my family. So I'm one of 8 grandchildren, 6 grandchildren who do really well and 2 that struggle. And I want to tell you about my cousin who has struggled with addiction. And he's been in and out of rehabs. And he's done the best that he could do. And he would always come back and fall victim to this. So he would come home from the rehab, and he was using just enough dope to keep himself from getting dope sick. Well, unfortunately, I can't stand here today and read you a letter from him because we buried him 4 years ago. Because he got a hold of some dope that had some fentanyl. It was a bad batch of dope that came in from Baltimore. And I know I like to preach about people's self-awareness and people being responsible for their own actions. But this was a young man who was struggling with addiction, got a hold of some drugs that was tainted with fentanyl, and took his life. So I really think we're at a position here where people have to think about this bill as it lays on your heart. I can't tell you to vote for it, and I can't tell you to vote against it. I can just tell you that the person who introduced these drugs to my cousin, if he'd have been on one of these programs, maybe those drugs wouldn't have made it into his hands. And I can tell you that I received a text message from my daughter, my 22-year-old daughter who lives in Morgantown, who is a very big fan of the woman from the 51st. Her politics and my politics do not mix, but I love her with all my heart. And she said, "Daddy, please don't vote for this bill." So I have weighing on my heart from what my daughter has told me, and I have weighing on my heart what I know to be true that has happened to my cousin. And I've seen what it's done to my uncle, who is one of my best friends, and I love him with all my heart. So I really think at this point in time, we just have to sit in this chamber, take a second and think how this bill lays on your heart, and move forward from there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? The gentleman in the 32nd, Douglas Fast, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, folks, I sat in Judiciary and I heard the testimony of Mr. Matthews, and frankly, the man needs to become a public speaker. He spoke so well, and I regarded his testimony very highly. And he gave testimony that he was convicted of possession with intent of like a very small amount of some drug, and that was his conviction. And he was, of course, in opposition to this bill. But I noticed something else he said, that he pled guilty among a charge of either 9 or 13 other counts. And it was all narrowed down to that one count that he pled guilty to. And, you know, I've sat beside defendants many times in courtrooms where they enter a guilty plea. And I don't know how it is in other jurisdictions, but in my jurisdiction, it takes about 45 minutes to an hour for the judge to take a guilty plea on a felony, because they ask the defendant in every way possible, do they understand? And in most cases, the defendant has to tell the judge what he or she did that made up the elements of the felony. And if the judge says, you know what, you have this element and this element, but what you're telling me does not equal that felony, and I'm not going to take your guilty plea. Basically, the judge will tell him, you go to trial, because what you're telling me doesn't equal the felony. And so it is, it's a very serious matter for a person to enter a guilty plea, but when they do, they understand. They have to understand. They have their lawyer sitting right beside them, and the judge asked them in so many different ways that they understand, and the judge has to be satisfied that this person is in fact guilty. And so, but then that's not the end of the story. The judge does not impose sentence right then and there. In almost every situation, there is a possibility, even after a jury trial and a person is convicted of a drug felony in a jury trial, almost every time the judge will say your sentence date is going to be, and it's usually a month, month and a half later. Why is that? Because the judge then orders the probation department to do a pre-sentence investigation report. And the probation department, they will talk to any victims that are involved. They will talk to family members. They'll talk to employers. They'll talk to education institutions, pastors, and they gather a whole host of information that turns into maybe a report of 5 to 10 pages long. And that report goes to the judge, and the judge then has the benefit of that information to get to know even more than the judge did before the report. Who are they dealing with? And if that report starts lighting up, prior conviction of delivery, prior conviction of possession with intent to deliver, abuse of drugs, whatever. If the report shows had prior usage of drugs one time, then the judge is going to realize, you know what, this person is not your one that's coming in from Ohio with a trunk load of heroin, bringing it into our community. This person probably has a drug problem, okay? But on the other hand, if it shows up in the report, this guy or this girl is the drug pusher. They're the ones selling and polluting our communities. The judge knows that. We don't give our judiciary enough credit. They understand by the time they get to that sentencing hearing, they understand who they're dealing with. And if the judge needs more information, they can get more information. And so that's how it works in the real world. And again, we're talking about possession with intent or actual delivery, a conviction of narcotics, not just marijuana or anything like that. Heroin, methamphetamine, fentanyl, heinous drugs. And again, the judge knows what he's talking about or who he's dealing with. And one thing that I like about this bill, it's the court may. When the judge gets that pre-sentence report, he or she's ready to pronounce sentence, the court may impose this extended release. It doesn't say that court must, okay? That's the benefit of having that report. They can figure this out and do the best they can, apply their wisdom, and determine if this person needs this extended release or not. And then another may, if you look on the bill on page 2, modifications of the terms of extended release. After a year, the court may terminate the extended release. If the judge believes that the person has learned a lesson and has been rehabilitated, is not going to reoffend and start continuing to pollute our communities, if that is the case, then the judge can terminate this supervised release. On the other hand, if in the beginning the judge believes this is the real drug pusher here in our communities, you're going to have the supervised release. And then during the supervised release, the person starts violating. Let's say they're bringing drugs into the community again or whatever. The judge may impose additional incarceration. May. There again, it's not mandatory. So I would submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, this is a good bill. There is all kinds of discretion given to the judges in these cases. These are important cases involving all of our health, safety, and welfare. And for that, Mr. Speaker, I would urge passage of the bill.
Do any other members wish to be recognized to speak to passage of the bill? If not, the gentleman at 35th, Dr. Capito, to close debate on the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. What a good debate, and I mean that. What issue is more important to West Virginia right now than the issues concerning substance use disorder and how it became what it is today? But I would caution all of those listening today that sometimes hypotheticals can help us sharpen legislation. They can help us make it better pieces of legislation, but they can also box us into a corner to where we can't get anything done. So I would argue that we can come up with a hypothetical for every piece of legislation that we put out that door that would make it inoperable if we wanted. But we're talking about what happens most of the time. We're trying to create solutions. I can't stand here in front of you today and tell you that this is a silver bullet. Can't do it. But what I can tell you is it is a genuine attempt to make things better. I heard earlier that why would we do something, continue to do something that doesn't work? We're not doing this. And the only place we are doing it, it is working. So we're trying to take a concept that's working and apply it to an area of huge concern. Why would we not try that? Why would we not try that? And to my friend from Kanawha County, this notion, sometimes we bring out our arguments that we think might scare folks, some new level of government. There's no new government here. And last time I checked, isn't it the role of government to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of our communities? Isn't that the number one priority? If not number one, it's got to be in the top three, right? Can't we all agree on that? Certainly, I think so. And so I say to you, the word may. We know the word may is in here. This is permissive. We're going to hear arguments next week about how we shouldn't take away, or next week, how we shouldn't take away discretion on one bill, and then we'll talk about how we should give more discretion on the other bill. So I would caution those of you that, and I'm included in this because I'll go both ways on certain instances. We need to be consistent about admitting that we like discretion in some places and maybe we don't like it in others. But I would argue, as the gentleman from the 32nd just said, the word may is a big deal here. This is a permissive tool in our toolbox. And I think, or I would like to think, that that standing here today, I'm someone who's very passionate about criminal justice reform. I think my friends on my side of the aisle and my friends on the other side of the aisle would agree to that. But I think this provides us with a tool in our toolbox, and we can talk about what could be. We can talk about the hypotheticals of what could be. Yes, somebody could get caught up and tripped up, and could they find themselves back in the prison? They could. But what else could happen? Could we keep somebody from trying heroin for the first time because we got a big wig drug dealer that we've kept our eye on off the street? Could that happen? Could we be resulting in less drugs, less poison and toxins in our community? Could that happen as a result of this bill? Could it? We know what else could happen. We heard all that, but couldn't something good happen? We're all entitled, obviously, to our own opinions, but we're not entitled to the facts. And the fact is that the vast majority of times that folks that are being wrapped up in the infractions that we're talking about today fall back into the trade because it's too good. The money's too good. It's too easy. The connections are there. And we heard from Mr. Matthews in committee about how we have government programs that helped him get back on his feet. And I applaud him for coming and his success, and it certainly motivated and inspired the whole committee, I would say that. So amen there. But this is another program that's giving others opportunities to succeed. To succeed. So why wouldn't we try it? If it doesn't work, we can always change it. And we've made it better by saying that if somebody serves their time and the judge sentences them to supervise extended release, they come back before that judge and have served their time. And if they've done wonderfully, the judge can take it away. It's discretionary. It's discretionary. Folks, I'll be the first one to tell you, I think this is a bill that's going to help people succeed. It's going to keep our communities safe, and it's going to keep these toxins off our streets. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 68 ayes, 29 nays, and 3 members absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2257 relating to extended supervision for certain drug offenders.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2507 remove the limitations on advertising and promotional activities by limited video lottery retailers.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection. The gentleman of the 35th, Dr. Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, 2 provisions in the West Virginia Code prevent any limited video lottery, or commonly referred to as LVL, retailer from conducting any video lottery advertising or promotional activities, or from using the words video lottery in the name of the approved location, or in any directions or advertising visible from outside of the retailer's establishment. This bill seeks to remove these 2 limitations on those activities. It removes a requirement related to requiring public notice, notice in a public hearing, which the lottery tells us would add probably a month of time required to the license. And finally, it removes language in 29-22B-1201G, which caps the number of locations in the state to 1,250 after July of this year. Mr. Speaker, urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the bill? The gentleman of the 30th, Doug Bates, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Chairman yield?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Just that last bit again, if I can. What are we doing with locations?
So there was a provision that was put in code, I don't know what the year was, that essentially made it that the number of LVL locations or LVL machines could not exceed 1,250 after July of this year. So essentially it put that cap, and then once we hit July of this year, it would have to either stay the same or be reduced going forward.
So how many locations do we have now?
If counsel, in my recollection, is correct, I think we're right at about 1,000, somewhere in there.
So we're not at the cap, but we're removing the cap, or?
We're talking about licenses there. Let me rephrase. We're not at the cap, no, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. I apologize. So we're raising the limit on the number of licensed locations or machines?
Slight nuance there. We're doing away with the cap. We're not raising any limits. We're just taking any limitations off.
Very nuanced.
Pardon?
That is nuanced.
Yes.
These operators, they bid for these licenses?
Correct.
They bid on machines or locations?
I think they bid on the license to be able to operate the machine.
So there are 2. So the part of the bill that relates to the advertising, I'm golden on. No issues there. I'm just trying to understand a little bit more clearly what we're doing as far as changing the licensing for machines versus locations. So
it has nothing, my understanding to the gentleman is that it does not have anything to do, stand by. It does not have anything to do with, excuse me, the number of locations, excuse me. The gentleman's correct. I had said license, excuse me. Locations was the correct term.
Okay. So we still have the same number of licenses for machines, but we could, in theory, have more locations for the same number of machines. Would that be the...
They say the first step is admission. I was wrong. So the licenses are obviously different than locations. This bill and the provision that you're talking about deals with locations. And licenses, I think, are issued by the Lottery Commission.
For the machine?
For the machine.
Okay. And so
to operate the machine.
Okay. So what we're doing is we're allowing for additional locations, not additional machines. Do I understand it correctly now?
we're taking away the cap.
For?
Which would allow for, if it could, as I said earlier, result in more locations, more than 1,250 locations.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? The gentleman in the 32nd delegate fast is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. Ladies and gentlemen, I love the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And they heard me say this in Judiciary, and sorry about that. You get to hear it again. But It's a Wonderful Life. You had Bedford Falls, and then you had Pottersville. You remember that scene? How unsightly and undesirable Pottersville was, and how nice Bedford Falls was. Well, that's what you have that very well could happen in your hometowns with this bill. This bill, to answer the gentleman's question, regardless of the number of machines, it removes any cap on locations whatsoever. You could have 50,000 locations under this bill. Now, there's still a cap on the number of machines that can be in a location. But you could have locations everywhere with one machine, two machines, or whatever. So that is one thing this bill does. So importantly, on pages 2 and 4, this goes from there shall be no video lottery advertising to prior to it is conduct any video lottery advertising. But then it tries to qualify it. It says any restrictions or limitations thereon will be defined by legislative rule. Now, I know sometimes in this legislature we pass a bill that requires a legislative rule. That's not here. It, number one, allows any video lottery advertising, and number two, it only hopes that there is forthcoming some legislative rule that would curtail or define what the advertising has to be. And we have no idea what that would be. But the bill, the way it's written, conduct any video lottery advertising. And folks, as I said, Bedford Falls versus Pottersville, all these little hot spots you see in your communities, sometimes very near houses, where children ride their bikes by, people walk. We know advertising works. Or my friend from the 27th wouldn't be in advertising. He knows it works. And so you could have, instead of West Virginia, you could have West Vegas. Everywhere that you see one of these spots. And I don't want that for my community. I don't think my community wants that in their community. And so, ladies and gentlemen, for that reason and those reasons, I would encourage a no vote on this bill.
The gentleman from the 61st, Dr. Barrett's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With Chairman yield?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding that all other lottery products in this state are allowed to be advertised for, and that includes traditional lottery, racing, casinos, sports betting, and iGaming. Is that correct?
Gentleman's correct.
And so that would mean that the LVLs are the only business, small business in this state that is not allowed to advertise, or are you aware of another one?
I'm not aware of any others.
Okay. It's my understanding, and I want to know if it's your understanding or was there testimony in your committee that these retailers, these small business owners, are merely looking for the ability to advertise on outdoor and indoor signage and on social media. Is that correct?
That's exactly what we heard.
Okay. They have expressed that advertising on TV, radio, and billboards is not something they're interested in doing?
They did express those sentiments, yes.
And we do in the state allow casinos to advertise on billboards for DraftKings and other sports betting, correct?
I've seen them, yes.
Okay. Doesn't this bill also allow the lottery to set rules for this advertising, and then that would come back for legislative approval to this body? Is that
absolutely?
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman at 27, Doug Gearhart's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I ask the Chairman of Finance to yield, please? Yes. Could you define for me the state's take percentage-wise for limited video lottery?
It's approximately 50%. It could range anywhere between 30 and 50%.
50%.
And if you add in the administrative fee, it's 52%.
Could you give us an amount total that limited video lottery contributes to the state's lottery?
For fiscal year 20, it was around $329 million, I believe.
329. Can you maybe give us a couple of examples of some things that are funded by the dollars of that 329 million?
Well, it could be senior centers, and other Promise Scholarship.
Promise Scholarship,
yes,
possibly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know, and this is do you know, are all of the locations of limited video lottery, are they profitable? Are there some that actually are at a loss?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to testify before you today that I have never invested a single dollar in a limited video lottery location. However, I am the sponsor of this bill. I put this bill together a couple of years ago, and you'll find it to be a tad bit odd because a couple of people had come to me and said that they had visited business locations for what they thought was to go get a meal. And when they got inside, it was a whole other thing because it said Billy Joe's or Bobby Lou or whatever the case may be, and they didn't have any idea what in the world was going on inside there. It didn't seem to make sense to me. It doesn't seem to make sense to me now. I'm not a gambler, not a participant of any of the activities that go on here, but we have West Virginia business owners that are prohibited the freedom of saying what they do in their business location. Simply what they do. I'm in the sign business. I'm not prohibited from saying Gearhart's sells signs. My friend from Jackson County sells insurance. He's not prohibited from saying he's in the insurance business, bar and grill business. A few years ago, I had a meeting with the city of Bluefield with regard to outdoor advertising, and one of the reasons that they had a prohibition on outdoor advertising was because they were afraid that some of the advertising that was going to take place in the small area in the city of Bluefield. I did a survey at that period of time, and it was a few years back, but I counted 40 billboards that advertised a gentleman's club, a single gentleman's club within 10 miles of the city limits of Bluefield. You can advertise someone that is selling that particular, I don't know, I guess you'd call it a service, but you're not able to say something that is contributory in the order of $369 million to things that we all want to be certain that our constituents can take advantage of here in the state. We're not allowing those people to simply say, this is the business that we're in that is sanctioned by the state. I'll be honest with you, sometimes I have a problem with how much of our spending here at the state is depending upon the gambling industry. It is a tad troubling. But if we're going to have West Virginians that we are sanctioning to do business that are contributing this much to our government spending circumstance, we need to allow them the freedom to say who they are and what they do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 53rd, Doug Jennings, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in opposition to this bill. I want you all to think who we are talking about that goes to these places. They aren't, you notice the gentleman said that he never spent a dime there. But I can tell you, I'm a tradesman. I work in the trades. And I have seen tradesmen, they get their paychecks and they hit these things. And we were told right over here, they lose 50% of what they put in there, bang, right off the bat. They're gambling against a computer. Guess who loses? They have no chance of winning. Now we want to advertise and tell these people, hey, you've got a great chance here. You're going to be rich, but we're going to take 50% of the money you were going to take home to your family. And now then the state's going to take that money and they're going to do great things with it. But we also, I don't know how much we spend on Gambling Anonymous. We have those signs all over the place. So maybe we ought to think about what we're doing. Think about the people that we're referring to that we're going to get in. People in here, very few of the higher income go to these places. Guess who goes? And we want to make it so they can do it more and spend more of their money so we can take care of their families another way. I think you ought to think about it, and I hope that you vote no on this bill. Thank you.
The gentleman authority, Thurgood Bates, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would my southern friend yield for a question, the sponsor of the bill?
I'm happy to be referred to as a Southerner.
Your bill here deals with the removal of limitations on advertising promotional activities by limited video retailers, and I'm fully in support of the position that you have that this is a legal activity and people should be able to identify what these places are and are not before entering them. But there is a section of the committee substitute that deals with locations that doesn't appear to be in the introduced version. Did your introduced version deal with locations?
It did not, no,
Did
sir.
not, okay. So that bill, this bill, I know just a number of the co-sponsors were also members of the Finance Committee. This bill didn't go through Finance, did it? It went through Judiciary, is that correct?
That is correct, and I'm guessing that this bill, like others that move through this House, can become a vessel for other ideas.
Okay. So the bill itself does deal with more than just advertising now. It deals with advertising and also locations. And
it does, as explained by the chair of Judiciary. The original intent simply meant to allow business owners to express what their business does so that people can make a decision whether they want to go into those places or whether they want to stay away from those places. Currently, by the names that are posted on those buildings, there's no specific reference as to the activity that is taking place in that location, and I would submit to the fact that there are many people that will enter a variety of LVL places assuming that they are different businesses than what they really are, which is a limited video lottery place.
I've made that mistake myself, so I think that the bill is well intended, and I would support that. I just, again, trying to understand, and perhaps you do, because we've discussed this issue before, the interplay between licenses and locations. There's a bidding process that goes on, as I understand, for machines, and those people that can operate these machines pay a price to do so. And we sell licenses up to a certain amount, as I understand it, for the machines themselves.
I'm not an expert, but there are two processes here. There is a bidding process for license, and those, I think, run at about $7,500 over a 10-year period, if I'm not mistaken. That's typical from the bidding process. And then there's an annual permitting fee, which is, I think, again, I can be corrected by anyone that has better knowledge, but I think $1,000 per terminal.
So these operators, these small businesses, have a significant investment in licensing to operate this business.
They have a considerable investment, yes, sir.
Okay. And would it be your interpretation that removing the restriction on the number of locations would improve those businesses' opportunities to be able to turn a profit or get a return on that investment?
I think it possibly does, but I don't know that that's the case, Delegate, because certainly every location would have to be profitable, or every machine on its own.
Thank you, sir. Perhaps I could return to the chairman very briefly, if I could, and we'll deal with this issue one more time. Thank you, sir. The provision that's been added and strucken from the original bill, what was that intended to do? What's the problem we're trying to solve here?
Well, I mean, I think the intent of this bill was to unleash some freedom, and but in all seriousness, I think we were I think that we're just allowing people to do business. I don't know that there was any other reason to do it other than to just kind of open up the doors.
Okay, so it looks like in the way it was written right now, in June 30th of 2021, we were to reduce the number of licensed limited video locations. And now we've said that we're not going to reduce them, we're going to allow them to be without restriction. Is that your reading?
Yeah, I think it is, and I would add to you, if I may supplement my last response more seriously, I think we all kind of, upon review, viewed this as extremely, arbitrary. Dates, numbers, nobody could make sense of why those were there, and we didn't have any testimony from anybody that could supplement that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman in the 10th, Kelly's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Going out in an evening to a casino can be a fun thing for adults. It can also be a devastating thing for adults. Here in West Virginia, we have 1-800-GAMBLER for those individuals who get addicted, those individuals that go into a casino and continue to go back to ATM machines and spend what the family has put together for a future. Keep in mind that when we make it easier for those patrons to go into a casino, and we have advertising on the wall that says the ATM machine is right here. Remember, so many of those individuals who are in there, that's the only machine in the entire building that they can win at. They spend their money, and they spend, in a lot of cases, their children's money and their children's future education. And for that reason, Mr. Speaker, I have always been opposed to having ATM machines in any of these gambling establishments. For that reason, I would certainly encourage a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 67th, Doyle is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was a member of this House a little over 20 years ago when these rules were adopted. They are reflective of one of the most sensible compromises I've ever seen this body come to, and it has been exceptionally effective. There were two elements that led to the compromise. One, just a huge deluge of complaints from the people of West Virginia about what were called gray machines cropping up all over the place. No limitation on how many or where or whatever, and we just heard lots and lots of complaints. And people said, do something about it. We had a governor, Bob Wise, who wanted to raise money for something called a Promise Scholarship. And the compromise that we came up with was, we will legalize and regulate these gray machines. We will take tax money from it and dedicate it to the Promise Scholarship. And also as part of it, we will limit the number of locations so there was no chance of seeing them on every street corner. As I say, I think that has worked out fine. Now, also, the limit on advertising was part of that. And I personally think that enough time has passed that we can relax the rules on advertising. But I think completely eliminating the limit on the number of locations would be a serious mistake. And for that reason, I will vote no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman of 61st, Douglas Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to respond very briefly to the gentleman from the 67th who talked about over 20 years ago when we passed this bill to allow LVLs, that cap of 1,250 locations was not in the bill at that time. In fact, that provision was just put in a bill 3 years ago when we increased the number of machines per location from 5 to 7. The problem that you run into when you artificially set a number at 1,250, then if we get back to that 1,250 number, which we're only just over 1,100 right now, but when we get to that 1,250 number, if another entrepreneur wants to open a location, the only way in which they can do that is to go buy someone else's location. So then all that you have done is artificially increase the value of someone else's business, and you're not allowing the free market to decide how many of these locations are across the state. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman of the 45th, Douglas Martin, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chairman of Judiciary please yield?
Of course.
Thank you very much. So under the current law, is it illegal to have any kind of advertisement whatsoever? So let's say I have my own personal website for my business. Can I put on there that I have that available at my business?
No.
And under this bill, will it allow me to do that?
It will allow you to do that once the Lottery Commission promulgates the rules on how you may.
So they will make that decision, the Lottery Commission will?
Correct.
Thank you.
The gentleman of the 16th, Douglas Hornbuckle, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from the 61st yield?
Be happy to.
Yes, sir. Just for clarification, what side of this issue are you on?
Well, as you know, I have a history of coming to the right side, so I am certainly in favor of this bill.
Thank you, sir.
The gentleman of the 35th, Douglas Capito, to close debate on the bill. Seems like it's time.
No desire to close.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 55 ayes, 39 nays, 6 members absent or were not voting. The majority of members having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2507, remove the limitations on advertising and promotional activities by limited video lottery retailers.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2621, mandating certification for certain members of fire departments, requires certain types of training, allows specialized personnel who are not firefighters to be members of a department, and require the postings of fire department evaluations.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman of the 29th, Douglas Steele, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to specify the required training for certain members of the fire departments to permit people with special skills like a scuba diver to be a member of the fire department and not be an actual firefighter, to provide a certification for fire chiefs or acting chiefs in the departments based on the current evaluations, and to promote transparency and accountability of fire departments to the members and public citizens. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We urge a passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, then those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 94 ayes, 0 nays, and 6 members absent or not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2621, mandating certification for certain members of fire departments, requires certain types of training, allows specialized personnel who are not firefighters to be members of a department, and require the postings of fire department evaluations.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House, to the Senate. Are there further bills on third reading? If not, bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 280 relating to e-commerce modernization.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Senate Bill 372, providing greater discretion to the West Virginia Board of Medicine to approve graduate clinical training.
Are there amendments?
The Committee on Health and Human Resources moves to amend the bill. This is HHRAM number 1.
Are there objections to having the amendment explained in lieu of having read? There are no objection. The gentleman from the 28th Delegate Pack to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Committee on Health and Human Resources amended this bill in 2 ways. First, it changes the standard from substantially equivalent to similar for when the board reviews whether the graduate training was appropriate. This will increase the flexibility given to the board to determine if the graduate training the individual received was in fact appropriate. It adds the provisions from House Bill 2703, which also clarifies that a temporary permit conveys with it the same authority as a license. This change is necessary to solve an issue that temporary permit holders are having with the DEA. The DEA is not recognizing the temporary permit and is not issuing these individuals a DEA license, which makes them unable to prescribe and means that they cannot effectively work in the setting that they have been hired. That's the adoption. That's the amendment, Mr. Speaker. We urge its adoption.
The question before the House is the primary amendment just explained by the gentleman from the 28th. Are there members who wish to speak to the amendment? If there are not, then the question is, shall the amendment be adopted? Those in favor of adoption will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2221 relating to the establishment of an insurance innovation process.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2335, increasing the minimum criminal penalty for a driver who, in an impaired state, causes the death of a minor.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2701, relating to authorizing the Division of Rehabilitation Services to approve acceptable training programs required for low vision individuals to obtain a Class G driver's license.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2709, providing that the aggregate liability of a surety on a consumer protection bond under the West Virginia FinTech Regulatory Sandbox Program does not exceed the principal sum of the bond.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2764, allow the Division of Financial Institutions to enter into reciprocity agreements with other jurisdictions that operate similar programs to the West Virginia FinTech Sandbox Program.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2765 relating to allowing emergency management and operation vehicles operated by airports to use red flashing warning lights.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2905 relating to repealing a prohibition against use of certain words.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
House Bill 2906 relating to the school building authority's allocation of money.
The bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For our colleagues, delegates Ellington and Higginbotham.
Are there objections to leaves being granted? There are no objections. Leaves of absences shall be granted. Introduction of guests, miscellaneous business. If not, lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move subject to announcements. The House adjourn until 11 a.m. Monday, March 8th.
The question before the House is the motion that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. on Monday. Are there announcements? Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Rules will meet Monday at 10:45 in the Judiciary Committee Room.
The gentleman from the 16th, Doug at Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Due to the length of the floor session today, the Committee on Technology Infrastructure meeting following floor session has been canceled.
The gentleman from the 32nd, Doug at Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Judiciary will meet Monday morning, 9 a.m., Government Organization Room. The agenda will be posted.
Gentleman the 15th, Douglas Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, a reminder that there will be a virtual public hearing from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. regarding HCR 9, hosted by your Government Organization Committee. Also, there will be a Government Organization Committee meeting at 1 p.m. in the House Government Organization Committee room Monday, and the agenda will be posted.
The gentleman the 44th, Douglas Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet Monday, February 8th at 1 p.m. in the House chamber. Again, your Committee on Education will meet Monday, February 8th at 1 p.m. in the House chamber. The agenda will be posted. Thank you.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question before the House is the motion that the House stand adjourned at 11 a.m. on Monday. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is adjourned at 11 a.m. on Monday.